And feel free to take a little bit of an adventure here. We're going to start out with some appreciative imagery. So imagine you are a musician, unless you truly are, then choose an image that best represents the pleasure you get from making music and share why in the chat. So feel free to put the number and then why you chose that image. Good. Thank you so much for participating in that little intro as we get started. And I think it just shows us how powerful visuals can be. Now, while these are stock photography, they're not actual drawn visuals. I think we can all relate to images in this way, especially if they're expressive and like music in this way. Great. So I just want to welcome everyone to the Appreciative Inquiry and Visuals mini session. My name is Heather Leavitt Martinez, and I'm a certified inquiry facilitator and virtual practitioner. And I'd love for you to give a nice wave to Mary. Mary, if you could let everyone know that you're here. Mary is our tech host today. Just want to welcome everyone, and I'm honored to live and work on the ancestral lands of the Ute, Pueblo, and Anasazi elders, past, present, and future, here in Turtle Island, North America. If you'd like to know what native lands you reside in, I'm going to ask Mary to put that in the chat. And we have a packed agenda today. So I'll ask Mary to add today's handout in the chat. If you don't have it, don't worry. We can do a quick draw along. But I want to get started. My plan is to keep this within an hour. And if I go over and if you need to leave, I completely understand. This session is being recorded for your convenience. And so I will stay on for about 10 additional minutes after to answer any more questions, starting with your burning questions today. And then I'll get to those pre-submitted questions. Uh, Super. Love it. I love seeing people from all over the world. I think it's really fun to be able to say, hey, we can all join here in the virtual space. Yep. So a lot of my students in tech hosting are from all over the world. My lettering students are mainly from Europe, and now I'm building some facilitation and some AI audience as well. And what I'm noticing here is this is really great to be able to see or to read where everyone's from, but let's make this visual. All right. So I'm going to have a map here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to enable you to annotate. So if you are on a computer or a laptop, like a desktop or a laptop, you should find this somewhere on your screen. You might see at the top of the screen that you're seeing my screen, and under view options, go down and click more. And then you can go to annotate, and a little window should pop up, and grab that stamp tool, and you can choose a heart or a star and just stamp where you are. Now, if you're having trouble doing this because maybe you're on a mobile device, or maybe you don't have the latest version of Zoom and having trouble annotating, just simply put that in the chat again. All right. So this is again another great example of how powerful visuals can be. Rather than just reading everyone in the chat, we actually have a picture here that shows us who is in the room. And all right. So are you a visual facilitator? Are you a facilitator? Maybe you're a trainer, or you present in some way online, or other. So again, you can grab that annotation tool. And if you're something else, please put that in the chat, because I'd love to see how you plan to use this. And again, this is another way for me to be able to see, well, all of us could be able to see who is in the room, a quick way of doing introductions, and also helps me know who am I speaking to. So it looks like we've got a lot of facilitators. We've got some trainers in the room. Some of you are visual practitioners. Would love to know, are you graphic recorders, graphic facilitators, visual thinkers? How would you identify? Because I know that even though visual practitioner may seem very niche to a facilitator, in the visual practitioner world, we have all kinds of visual practitioners. So excellent. Matt's an agile coach. Great. Does a lot of virtual teaching and training. That's fantastic. Kathy's a coach for evidence-based practices and graphic facilitates. It's wonderful. Business partners, business advisors, wonderful to see. Excellent. I'm going to take a quick snapshot. I'll do a countdown. So get all your stamps in. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Excellent. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And it says so much to be able for us to all see very quickly who is in the room. But I do want to share with you a little bit about today. The purpose of this mini session is to learn how to use the appreciative inquiry process template to facilitate a discovery meeting conversation. You received access to the template in your welcome email, and let's also go ahead and put it in the chat again, Mary, since we had a bit of a chat storm there. And again, you don't have to print this out and have it today. You're welcome to draw along with me, but you might want to use it in the future. And if you don't have it printed out, again, no worries. It's super, super simple. Hopefully, the payoff today is you can actually use this visual in your next discovery meeting or practice in other meetings to help you be more productive in your work. Awesome. Get some nods and some thumbs up. So, what is a discovery meeting? This is initial meeting where you meet a potential client to discuss their project and how you can support and together find ways to collaborate. Now, my approach is that this is one of service, so that I can model the way and demonstrate by facilitating the conversation so they can experience what it's like to work with an AI facilitator, but in a visual way. Now, if you're not an experienced facilitator, that's okay. I created this AI process template when I wasn't a facilitator. In fact, I was a graphic recorder. I wasn't even facilitating at the time. But at that time, I was looking for ways that I could bring value with visuals and make meaning, more meaning into meetings. And this template later became a facilitation tool that I now use every time I meet with new clients and projects to start. So having this template as a guide has really saved me in a lot of situations to help keep the conversation on track and harvest what's needed to give everyone a sense of what AI and my approach is all about. So hopefully you all have one of these. And the process we'll learn today is about the 5D IA framework as it pertains to a discovery meeting. This visual really just has the four. We'll talk a little bit about the define as well. And so rather than telling you the benefits of combining appreciative inquiry and visuals, I'd rather you experience it. And I think I shared with you an intro video in the email. We can also share that in a follow-up email. But this is really just a great way to review should you want to take the course in November. All right, so let me show you. I'd love for you to grab your favorite mark making tool. You can write all over this. And again, if you don't have it, then you can certainly just draw along with me. And the very first phase in the 5D process is the define phase. And your writing doesn't have to be great. Mine doesn't either because I'm teaching and working so quickly. And even when you're working as a facilitator, again, having a nice lettering style is good as long as it's readable. So that's the big piece. So when I get ready to meet with a client, I do a little bit of prep work and I start by writing in the center of the piece. Here, I'm really doing some of the defining. I'm defining, maybe I'm looking on their website and maybe I'm looking for their mission, their purpose. Maybe I understand some of their goals. If I do get an email from a client, this is where I start taking notes about them and what they might be wanting before we even have the session. And I may even also write in here, this might be my notes for the entire session. So I might even write the date here somewhere. And I might even write who the participants are. Maybe I'm inviting some folks. Maybe the client is going to invite some people, just so I know who is in the room. So that can be helpful. And I might even ask myself some pre-questions. I might write down some questions that I might want to ask the client before we even meet, just so that I've got some notes for myself. And then when we meet, I begin by confirming what they wanted to meet about. And I may even ask about their high bars or low bars. So let me give you a visual for that, because I think you might find this interesting. And so when I talk about high bars and low bars, this is coming from my friend Muddy Schlegel. And whether it's for the session we're planning for or the actual session that we're in with the client in the discovery meeting. And so we want to be thinking about what are our high bars and what are our low bars? And what do I mean by that? What is the best possible outcome for today? Could be the high bar, but the low bar is just that minimum of what do we need in order to feel satisfied with the time that we have invested today. So let's give it a try. I'm going to model the way. You still should be able to annotate if you like, or you can put this in the chat. This annotation would only be for texting, or text, so you can open up the annotation tool and type a text and be thinking about a low bar, again, is that bare minimum of what you would like to learn today. And I'd like to hear what you'd like to learn today if there's something really specific. And a high bar would be a nice to have or something that would exceed your expectations. So for me, I'm going to add in the actual slide here, I want to cover the high-level overview of my process and provide some ideas on how you can use visuals in the AI approach of running discovery meetings. And again, I just love to do this because it starts to set expectations. As a learner, it sets your learning expectations. And as a facilitator, it starts to set expectations for you as a facilitator. So this would be on the balcony view, would help you set expectations and with the client. All right. And then my high bar is that you leave inspired and ready to implement one or more ideas, that you gain from being here. Yes, so great questions in the chat, and I'm definitely going to answer more of these in detail at the very end, Veronica. I can speak more to the course in November. And yes, you do have time to register. And yeah, I'm happy to share what I use. I'll do that at the very end. And it's also something I'll go into detail in November as well as we get into that deliver stage. Are we delivering online? Are we delivering in person? So why appreciative inquiry? How does the AI framework apply to visual facilitation? Okay. Leave today with visual skills and new tools to be able to utilize in future meetings and trainings. Excellent. Yeah. Wonderful. And get more information about AI in detail. Okay. Excellent. So I would say, for the most part, I cover the benefits of AI and using AI and visuals in that intro video that I sent out. It's about 15, 20 minutes long. Today, you're going to get a little bit of, and we'll just go ahead and clear this out. And I'm going to go to that next slide. So again, you can put your annotation tools away. But I want to talk a little bit about that balcony and dance floor. So you're going to get a little bit of the balcony view. What would you use as a facilitator? And you're going to get a little bit of dance floor today as we write on and go through the template. And so hopefully you're going to get a little bit of each of these things. All right, Chris is looking for a better understanding of the 5D model, high immediate use with clients. Excellent. I hope you can take something away. And I'm going to ask you at the end, were you able to meet that learning aspiration as well? Matt's looking for more engaging ways to share ideas, and visuals are a powerful way to connect. I couldn't agree more. And ideas on how to leverage visuals to make the discovery stage of AI resonate with clients. Yes, I love that so much. Excellent. All right, so let's go back to our template here so that we can start writing on it again, and let's really put it to work for us. Excellent. So after that define stage, I'm really trying to get a better understanding of what's going on with the client before I meet with them. Say I'm in the discovery meeting now. I know who the participants are. I'm greeting them as they're coming in, whether it's virtual or online, in person. And then I start asking the question, tell me about the strengths of those working together on this initiative. It could be, tell me about your project, your team, or your organization. But what you're really looking for here are the strengths and the skills of the team, and maybe even ask them, can you give me an example of when your team was successful? Can you give me an example of a project that you all worked on? Maybe it was a challenge, or maybe it was a quick one, but tell me about the successful attributes that you had. What were the strengths that you drew from? What skills did it take? Or tell me about your organization. And once you get to a certain point in this conversation, maybe they start talking about some of the negative things, because a lot of times we tend to be more problem seeking than possibility seeking. And that's what we want to do with appreciative inquiry, is to ask questions that are going to get us there. So I shared a few things here. Tell me about your project team or organization. Share a recent accomplishment you experienced by working together. And a big key thing is what contributed to your collective success. Because if we're talking about working as a team, you want to talk about that collective feature. Now, if you were using AI for coaching one-to-one, it would be slightly different. And if they start talking about those problem things, you want to be able to shift them from problem seeking to possibility seeking. And one way to do that is to ask those unconditionally positive questions, right? So here are the questions where you're not saying, just tell me about a project you did. Tell me about what was successful about that particular project. Excellent. And then that's going to lead you into the dream phase. And I love the dream phase because this is where I start to thinking about what is it that they want to get out of this? What are their desired outcomes? I'm going to try to focus in a little bit better. There we go. That's slightly better. And so you might just directly ask them what will be the ideal or desired outcome, but that's a little straightforward, right? And sometimes facilitation isn't always in a straight line. Sometimes we kind of have to dance around in order to get there. And so here is where you might ask them, how do you want people to feel during or after the session? Right? So here is where you're asking, how do you want participants to feel? Maybe you're wondering, what do you hope to achieve? And really focus in on those feelings and attributes that might feel a little too feely, but tell them, hey, you know what? We're dreaming here. If sky's the limit, if you had a magic wand for a day, uh, what would that magic wand help bring us? Right? And where do you want to get? So if we're looking at if we're really dreaming here and we're looking at the stars, what's that going to take? And actually, not the what yet. We're just asking for that why. And why do we want to feel this way? And getting back to that desired outcome. Now, for some, it may be really straightforward. We need to be able to accomplish this. That's fine. But look for those positive feelings and attributes in order to get there. And then we can start to get into the design phase. That's where we get into the actual how. And some folks, it might be their role to actually be really good about gathering logistics. This is about the space, the time, the participants. Do we need to make any accommodations? That might be for folks that are having hard of hearing or they're blind, they can't see, or it may be that they need closed captions, or it might even be that we're doing hybrid. What do we need to do in order to get into that design phase? And we're constantly, as we're doing the design phase, constantly going back to the dream to making sure that we're reaching and that we're designing for that desired outcome. We're working towards that goal. So you've experienced a little bit of the balcony and a little bit of the dance floor in terms of the define, the discover, and the dream. This design is my very, very favorite part. And it's what we're going to be really focusing on in that 3-week session in November. And I want to show you some examples of some of the templates that I've used in the past. Here we go. So these are called stick-it cards. These are just small. I wouldn't say too small. They're about a medium size, a little bit larger than a Post-it note. These are stick-it cards from Neuland. And what these are actual templates that I created for a client at the beginning of the pandemic that was challenged with having to pivot their business in order to survive. Now, these are just a few examples. So the first one was, let's talk about where we were, right? We were in buildings. What were the goods and services? So this is a bit of a discovery piece. We're harvesting what were our goods and services at the time prior to the pandemic, who were our partners, how did they reach us, who were our clients, and all of this changed when we got online, right? So now let's talk about what, there we go. Let's talk about where we were, where we need to go, what's weighing us down, what's worth taking with us, and what do we need to leave behind? What ideas need to be launched? What can we do right away in order to get there? And what do we need to plant? What kind of seed ideas do we need to plant at that time? And then thinking about those seed ideas, what's needed in order to grow. So we're just very slowly having these conversations, exploring all the different ways and using very simple visuals like this. Just a very simple question and a very simple visual will then give us plenty of room to start writing down what the participants are saying. And then here we can start dreaming. We can say, okay, where can we be? Let's really think about what, now that we've discovered some of these things, what does our future look like? And does that mean drawing a picture together? And you can certainly hire someone to help illustrate that, or it's a really great practice to do in small groups, whether it's virtual or in person, to be able to help people visualize what that looks like. It doesn't have to be a masterpiece. It just needs to be getting those ideas out on paper. And then finally, at some point, you're going to get people who are like, okay, let's roll up our sleeves. Let's go. Let's go. They're ready to go. Well, let's create a big template that talks about who we're serving. Is it the planet and the people? What are our goods and services that we're going to be creating? How are they now different? What are our values that's going to help us make decisions? And what are some of those tangibles, those no kidding what we need in order to get us there? So these again are some very, very simple graphics that I do very short and on the fly. Sometimes I photograph these, share them with the client. We can, or sometimes it's something that I just show up with, but maybe on a larger format. So let me stop sharing now so I can give you some examples. This would be more like the delivery stage, right? So you've seen how I was using a document camera to show you something like this on my tabletop. That's a great format to work with. I also work with, this is called a graphic wally. And it's a really great product that I actually have on usually on the other side of the room that I point the camera to because it will fit, it'll fill the entire thing. And I can scroll it. So this is like I would say 200-meter piece of paper where I can just scroll and scroll and scroll and have lots of information that I can write as I'm working. I can do it here, or I can sit across the room and run that as a camera. Also, when I was in person, I would take a really large portfolio of some of my very, very basic drawings and put them in this portfolio and walk around the different agencies that I had. And oftentimes even put, now I wouldn't write directly on this. I had these clear statics that I would put over it, and I would write with a wet or a dry erase or dry marker and go right over it so that people can get a feeling of what it was like to work visually. And something really simple like, what ideas are we planting? And let's just write a few of those out. And that could be a great thing to be able to have the client experience in a very quick and easy way. And one of the things that we're going to really be focusing on in November is creating those custom graphics and templates to be able to work to. Yeah. So just wanted to give you just a sneak peek of some of that delivery, some of those delivery tools, because they are so important in what we do as visual practitioners. And there's lots of ways to be able to do that. So I'm curious about this. You received this. So this was really fast, but I want to leave plenty of time for questions as well. So I'm curious in some of those high bars or low bars. Let's talk about those low bars first. Were your low bars, are you at least inspired to do some of these visuals in your work? And are you leaving inspired and ready to implement just something that you saw here today, or do you need more clarification? Go ahead and feel free to put that in the chat. Great. Okay. I know it's a little bit of a teaser, but I also want to be able to give you lots of resources too. And so what I'd also like to share with you is, and I'll put this in a follow-up just so that you have it, but this chart that I was sharing with you is also available as a PowerPoint slide, an editable PowerPoint slide. So it's something that if you're meeting with a client, you can have it up and be taking notes so that you have it in a digital format if you don't want to write it out. That's great if you need to copy and paste some of that great content into a proposal. And I'll share that in a follow-up email with you. It comes as an editable PowerPoint slide. And you can either show it to the client as you're filling it out, or it can be for your own simple note-taking as well. Great. I'm glad to hear that it's an effective teaser. Well, then let me answer some of your questions. So what questions do you have when you were thinking about your high bars and your low bars? Think about what question can you ask in order to meet your learning aspiration or intention. Yeah, great. Ashley's saying, I really like the idea of having visual templates based off of the AI framework ready to go before meeting with a client. It allows to pull from templates to spark conversation. Absolutely. And sometimes when I'm working, I may have those templates written out, like you saw. Sometimes they're just in the back of my head. So I can quickly write down the question. And then as they're talking, I can start writing down those answers. And we're going to cover some basic icons in the course, but we're also going to be covering a lot of how to customize the templates as well. Great. Now, there is time to sign up. So if you don't mind, Mary, putting that link in the chat, that would be great. And I'm happy to go into Q&A. What cardstock do you recommend for the size cardstock do you recommend for these visuals? Well, again, that depends on how you are delivering that, right? So for some of my clients, I'm working 11 by 17 with a document camera. So to go back to the question we had before, this is an IPEVO document camera. I use the VZR or the VZX. Now, I like the VZR. It doesn't have a battery pack at the bottom. The VZX does. If you're traveling and you also need to take a document camera with you for some reason, say you're doing hybrid, but also traveling with it, the VZR is excellent for that. For these cardstock, this is just a nice small handy size. They make them much bigger and Post-its come much smaller. I just like them because they're a little color coded. So I can use those. And sometimes I'll be standing, if I'm with the client, either in person or virtual, and I'll be writing it down and I can post it up either behind me or a flip chart as I'm working, and we can move things around. It's a really great way to order the agenda. You can co-create with your client, or if you decide that you want to create it all by yourself, again, having these movable pieces are really great. Another product that I was using was called the Aesthetic. And so this is actually a piece of, it's recyclable plastic, but it uses static electricity. So there's no sticky to it, and it'll stick to anything, both horizontal and vertical. So I'm not quite sure if that answered your question about the size, Wayne, but so let me know if it didn't. All right. Are there certain types of clients that this approach works better with? Personality, communication, et cetera? That's a really great question, Chris. I have worked with across industries. One of my latest projects that I did was with an art center. So I thought, well, artists would love this visual. What they didn't like was being in the meeting. They wanted to go out doing the work. They didn't want to be in the meeting. And it was mixed with board members who were creative, but they weren't active, creative, visual, dance, theater artists. These were bankers and accountants and lawyers, and they were all there. So I had them all in the same room. And so it was really exciting to be able to use visuals because it was keeping them engaged regardless of where they came from. So if anyone else has experience working with different clients and they have an opinion about, is there certain groups that like this better than others? I'd love to hear. I will say that I found that there's some groups that like to get to consensus faster. And so you might find that using Post-its in a very organized way to come to consensus can be very helpful. Whereas some folks really like to emote or talk more or spend more time in the beginning. But I would say that that's probably a mixed bag no matter what group that you have. Yeah. All right. The brand of document camera. I think I answered that already. Yeah, it's called IPEVO. I'll put that in the chat. And the one that I like best is the VZR. It has the best camera and it has all of the controls right here. So some of them are really simple document cameras that a lot of teachers and students were using during the pandemic, but there's not as many really great bells and whistles to it. So that's probably my favorite. Excellent. Thank you for putting that link in the chat. Yeah, I think it's important that we begin the discussion with the client from the start of the contract. Um, you can start with visuals there. You don't always have to. And I may have missed a question here. So Mary, if you see any.
There was a question, there's a link and a question about whether these are the cards from Neuland. And
Okay. Yeah, so those are the stick it cards, and those are rectangular. These are actually square, and they don't have the name of it on there. I want to say they have a different name. They're called Instacards, and they come in a medium size, and they also come in an extra large size, which are super fun. And if you're working in person and um, have a lot of room, they're excellent. This one is one that I use as a sign. Oops, you're muted. So they come in really, really big sizes as well. You can kind of see the the proportion to my face is compared to the smaller one. I think it's about a quarter of the size. Yeah.
And then you have a question about, would love to know more about the graphic wall you used from Chris.
Yeah,
Chris
I
is asking
love
that
it.
question.
We've got a bunch of gearheads in the group. That's great. So this is called the Graphic Wally, and I have this is Neuland. If you go to Neuland.com, um, there is they have all kinds of facilitation tools, and some that are built specifically for online analog presentation. I am an ambassador, so if you want to place an order, just let me know. I'll put my ambassador code actually in the follow up. You get 15% off the first order, which is really great if you want to buy some equipment. I wouldn't bother using the 15% on a couple of markers. They do have resellers all over the world except for in the US, so you have to buy it directly from Neuland. So yeah, so this is called the Graphic Wally. I have it on top of a stand called the Lift Boy. So this has got a little lift on it so it can go up and down, and then it scrolls back and forth. And they do make flip charts that are specifically for online use. They even have one that's square so that it can sit right next to you as you work. So the Graphic Wally is really great for graphic recorders, sort of the silent people in the room that are going to be drawing and capturing while a facilitator is working. And so it works. It works so that it's the same size as our video screen here. And there are extenders if you want to be able to pull back and have even um, a longer piece to work with. So yeah, good. I also want to grab a couple of the questions that were pre-submitted prior to the session because it's less about gear and more about the practical applications. And I'll get way into the practical applications in the November session, but I also want to be able to answer some of these pre-submitted ones too. So actually there were a few about products and just different resources. So for those of you that want to know a little bit more about appreciative inquiry, my favorite book is called Appreciative Inquiry, Change at the Speed of Imagination. And I will include that in the follow-up as well. I love this book because it really takes traditional organizational development and kind of puts it on its head, because it really helps you create that paradigm shift of what you need to be able to do in organizational change to make change in an appreciative inquiry way. So this is one of my favorite books. If you're looking for books that are going to help you ask questions, there's two books that I love: The Encyclopedia of Positive Questions and Appreciative Team Building. And these are full of universal positive questions to help you with those as well. Again, I'll give you all this listing. And then a few other books that I think are really great, especially around strategical change, is Appreciative Sharing of Knowledge, Leveraging Knowledge Management for Strategic Change. And then this is The Appreciative Inquiry, A Positive Revolution to Change. And I believe this does come as an audiobook. This was the first book that I read when it came to appreciative inquiry. And the latest book that I've read that's also had the most impact in my personal life is Building Resilience with Appreciative Inquiry by Joan MacArthur Blair and Jeannie Cockle. And they also teach a resilience class at the Center for Appreciative Inquiry that I just took last month. And it's been incredibly life-changing, especially for maintaining equanimity. And that's really great to have when you're working online. For those of you who are really interested in visuals and how do you get more visuals into your work, I have a couple of resources that I highly recommend, and I'll tell you why, not just to just throw those out there. But there's a German company called Bacablo, and these Bacablo books are full of very easy to draw symbols and icons that you can use in your meetings. They also offer online classes. I started with these in my very early days. They weren't teaching classes until the last couple of years. And then I started taking their classes, and they're wonderful. I've also taught at their headquarters in Cologne. They wanted to learn about lettering, and I wanted to learn about their visuals. So they have a couple of books here, Vocablo 1, Vocablo 2. For those of you that are more people driven and you want to learn how to draw people, they have a wonderful book called Emotions. And it also goes through lots of different body styles and how do we draw emotions as we're drawing people. So, again, very simple. Another great resource is Brandy Agerbeck teaches a class called the AGME course. It's 90 days of visual thinking. And this is, it does cover all of the elements that we use as visual practitioners, but also how to use it in thinking. And so very thinking approached as well. I also recommend Christina Merkley for those of you who are in Canada, but now we can learn from her anywhere. She was one of my first teachers. She also teaches a visual facilitation and visual coaching courses. And I've also been trained by, and I recommend training from the Grove. Yeah, so Karen, it's actually loosetooth.com. I'll put the excellent. So those are the really great ways of creating those visual vocabularies in a very fast and easy way. What I'll be focusing on in November, some of these icons, but really about creating customized templates. So in the first session, we'll be talking about Dream, and I have 5 templates that I'm going to have for you right away that you can adopt any one of those during that dream phase. In the design phase, you're going to have some pre-work, and I've just added some office hours in case you want a little bit of one-to-one time with me so that we can go through and really customize some of your visual templates to meet those desired outcomes. And then for the delivery phase, I'm going to be talking more about these products and how to use them as you deliver. All right. What other questions that you have? And I'm going to go back to some of these pre-submitted questions. All right. You can go ahead and put those in the chat at any time. And if you need to drop off, it's totally understand. We are recording, so I can send you a copy of that after the session. So another question that I got was, how do you make the shift with longstanding clients to incorporate more visuals? Are there any suggestions for how to use this with Mural or Mural? So I say one visual at a time. If you are new at this, introduce slowly so that you feel comfortable integrating visuals into your process and you can gauge your client's response. So I would start at the next discovery meeting with this template. It's very simple. You can just start using words, but you're starting to think in a visual way, and then maybe introduce a harvesting template in the dream stage. And then later you can incorporate visuals into the meeting design and delivery. You know, if you're not good at managing all the markers or managing the digital, then you might want to get better at that before you decide, oh, I'm going to facilitate all visuals in your next meetings. Just take it slow. And so this is where you can really, if you start with that, the dream phase, this is really where you can start incorporating that. And then when you get into that design and delivery phase is where you can really start working with the third-party collaboration tools like Mural and Miro. And so I was going through my Mural this morning, and I have a lot. Unfortunately, I can't share a lot with you that I do because they're client-based and they were all filled up, but I was able to semi-scrub one that was a piece that I did with some other visual practitioner folks, and we just needed a really quick and dirty template. Now, Mural does have templates that they provide that you can do some searching for, and they're really great. But I do make a lot of my own templates. And here's one that I created just really, really quick for a group of people who wanted to use the 4D process, the appreciative inquiry process. I did a quick introducing ourselves. We had wherever you see a line here is what this was for. And then I had stickies already laid out. Notice that they're color coded in each one of these stages. And I'd ask the question, what does this mean to you? And then in that process, people are starting to harvest. We could certainly cluster. What could it become? How do you see yourself in it? So this was really an individual practice. We weren't working as a group. We were seeing one thing that we wanted to work with. And then where do we want to go from here? Where do we want to take it to that next iteration? And then we finalized after going through all of this. This was about an hour and a half session. We finalized our discussion and did a who, what, when chart. So who was going to do what by when was a bit of an action planning for our next meeting. All right. Hopefully that was helpful for whoever asked the question
Yeah.
about integrating mural and mural. Yeah.
And we have a good question in the chat.
Yeah.
Susanna, excuse me, asks, how much pre-knowledge and understanding of AI do we need for the course?
Excellent question. For my course, I would say reading up on the principles would be really good. Watching that pre-video, I can also make, yeah, so watching the pre-video would be good, but it's not necessary for you to be an appreciative inquiry facilitator. I know you, Susanna. I'm so glad that you're here today. If it's something that you want to take, then I would say, maybe listening or reading an AI book would be really great, but it's not something you have to know. What I have found in this work is that with every AI resource that I take in, I'm constantly applying that to how am I thinking about how can I apply this with a current client or in my life. So you don't need to know it all, but knowing some of the principles is really going to help you out. And I believe I put that in the email, a link to the principles, and I'll also do a follow up as well. But if you have any specific questions, let me know. All right. Now I know we have a lot of facilitators in the room. I got a pre-question of how to integrate visuals without taking away from eye to eye connection. And so let me answer that quickly so we just have it for the recording. This is so critical for facilitators who don't want to lose eye to eye contact because turning and writing on the wall actually takes away time and attention from the conversation. And so, but know that the advantage of seeing something written down, of something someone shared, it helps that person feel heard. And seeing it on the paper takes the emotion out of it so that others can process it. And what I mean by that is, have you ever been in a meeting where someone's really, really like aggressive about what they want to say? It's really important. Then what happens is that all of the attention goes on that person or on that emotion and not the message that was being said. And so sometimes people will tune them out, but seeing that written on the wall can be really important. And for those who are maybe a little bit more soft spoken, maybe they don't have a lot of emotion, or they've just said what might seem a small thing, having that written down brings equity to those two messages. And so now we can really see some of the hidden gems that are coming out in a session. So writing those things down are very, very important. I think we can all agree to that. But at the same time, like I said, turning around at the wall can take away. So I suggest hiring a co-facilitator. If you're a facilitator and maybe you know the value of visuals, but you don't want to take you don't want to put all of your attention there, hire a graphic recorder or a graphic facilitator. Have participants interact with the charts by harvesting themselves. This is a great thing to give them in a breakout session and send them off, right? So they can do some of that work or keep it light by making these kinds of templates ahead of time and capture just the strong points. But just remember that if there's a really strong point that's being captured, also capture what some of the resolutions were around it. So what were some of the ways that we've resolved this so you don't keep people hanging? Great. All right. Question from Wayne. How do you inspire participants to use visuals on their flip charts? Well, I think giving them sometimes giving them a very simple graphic to use, whether it's on a handout that they have to draw or you've pre-drawn it for them, I think is important. But really answering, if you're saying how to inspire them to do that, first it's giving them the tools, right? But then it's also about telling them the why. Why is this important? Keep bringing it back to that desired outcome. What's the purpose of this meeting today? One of the exercises that we're going to be doing is we're all going to have a flip chart and we want you to and then put it out there. I think a really great way to use these is in two major places, and that is on the dream state where they're creating that vision because they can be really free with it. Um, in the middle part, the design part, that can really be happening where they are focusing on the discussion and someone else might be capturing it. And then in the delivery state, when they're actually writing down some of those action items, meaning I wouldn't go for being the person typing those up and seeing them on a screen. It's like make them sit down and say, okay, if we're going to get there, here's what we need to do. That's the who, the what, by when. and then have them sign it, right? So give it that getting them involved with flip charting at that point can be really important too. All right. Thank you, Laura. I appreciate this. Great. Yeah. Yep. I will definitely send the recording. So did that answer your question, Wayne? Or do you have more? Hopefully, when you ask a question, it will create more questions. So as you leave today, if there's something that comes up that you think, oh, you still have a burning question, please feel free to email me. I'm happy to answer that anytime. The class, the 3-week class that I've been preparing for all year, actually starts next week. It is November 2nd. Yep, the 2nd, the 9th, and the 16th. It's held at the same time that we're holding this now. It's 2 hours each week. And I'll be holding office hours, I believe, the following Monday for each of those, for those of you who want a little bit more customization than what I'm teaching in the class for your templates. So I wish you all great luck. I'd also love to hear how you're using this 4D template in your work, should you decide to take this a little bit further. And I will follow up with a PowerPoint file as well in the follow-up email. So thank you, everyone. Have a great day.